yeah, they haven't made this break yet. But there might be other things that we could do.
So
All right.
and welcome. I'd like to call to order the September 11th, 2012 regular meeting of the Boulder Valley School District Board of Education. Sandy, can you call the roll?
Albright.
Here.
Belleville. Benford. Fuqua.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind all who gathered here tonight the vision of the Boulder Valley School District is to graduate students in the new century who have the knowledge, skills, and personal characteristics that will make this world a safer, more thoughtful, and more inclusive place in which to live. And begin with our first agenda item, the superintendent's report. Dr. Messenger.
President Reed, members of the board, good evening and welcome. A few items I'd like to comment on this evening, and then of course I'd be glad to answer any questions about these items or others that you would have. Just want to note that we have started with several of our advisory councils and met yesterday with the Teachers Advisory Council. Had several good topics of discussion. I mentioned just a couple. We talked about some of the new tech security measures we're putting into place, which requires students to use passwords, and so there's a fairly steep learning curve, but it's a part of our overall security initiative, and we're learning together how to do that, and I think we're making good progress around that, but good conversation with teachers and principals on that. Met with Principals Advisory Council today. Part of our agenda, one of our agenda topics was discussing the teacher selection process, which will be on your agenda in later of October, but it was a chance for us to talk a little bit about their experience and their thoughts as we move forward. So we'll incorporate their input as well when we bring this to the board in October. Tomorrow evening, the District Parent Council has their first meeting, and so met with the tri-chairs of that group and looking forward to another good year. One of the issues they would like to visit about is sort of a recap on the budget process, because they were very involved in that discussion last spring. So I'll use that opportunity to do a little bit of wrap up where we wound up, and also work that we're starting already as we're starting to plan for the next year. So that's tomorrow evening, and also on Thursday evening, the Parent Engagement Network has their initial meeting for the year, and I will be a part of the program welcoming folks back and give a little bit of a district overview and update. So all of our respective groups are up and operating, and I would guess Tom might speak to the DAC meeting that we were both at last week, so I'll leave that to him. A couple things coming up I would just mention. One is that next week the Denver Area School Superintendents Council has their fall meeting, and so I'll be participating in that, and also the Colorado Association of School Executives fall planning meeting is done in conjunction with that, so I'll be participating in both of those events at the end of next week. And the final thing I would mention is that you are aware, because we afforded some information to you around the EcoPass campaign that's going on with our employees. Bob Jamieson and others are taking lead with that. A lot of good energy behind that. Our goal is to secure over 2,000 participants for an annual fee of $60 a year. And then we'll be able to make them available to all full-time or benefit employees that can participate. So we're 800 plus, we're on our way. Our goal is to reach the 2,000 mark or greater by the end of September. Again, nice partnership with city and county on this. We're very hopeful that we can get this launched this year. We think it'll only build over time, and so a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm around having that available for our employees at a very low rate. So anyway, that concludes my report for this evening. Again, I'd be glad to answer any questions or add additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Messenger. Looking around. Any questions? Our next item is student communication, although I think we're a little earlier in the year for SAC to be here. So we can move to our next item, which is public hearing and public participation. No speakers signed up, so we can dispense with that and go right to board communication then. Leslie?
I'll start. I'll just mention the EcoPass program. That's something that I've been pushing. I know when we met with RTD many years ago, that was something I was hoping we could do. So I really hope that the staff and teachers step up and $60 is not much. My husband and I both get eco passes through work, and it's just nice, you know, every once in a while you say, well, I'm going to ride the bus, and you just flip it out. It's only $5 one way to DIA, which saves a lot of money. So I hope we get that goal. I'm very excited we're doing that. One thing that our office just received is Discovering Careers in Earth Sciences, and it's a packet of information that's been put together by a lot of different societies, NASA, USGS, et cetera, and I know that we need to start thinking about careers. I think it's aimed at middle school, and I believe we are starting to have to do that in the state. So I just wanted to bring a packet, and maybe Sam, I don't know if Sam would be the appropriate
with Sam.
person, but after the meeting, I can give that to you to give to Sam, because it might be sort of interesting to take a peek at it. I think you might be able to get a certain number free, and then after that, it's maybe, you know, bulk, pretty reasonably priced. So, and then the last thing I wanted to mention is Shelley and I both attended a positive coaching alliance meeting at Boulder High yesterday. They had a workshop for the parents. And I know when Melissa first became athletic director at Boulder High 3 years ago, she had an athletic summit, and this was mentioned a lot, coaching issues. I have to say, I get more people complaining about coaches than teachers. So I was excited to see that we were doing it at Boulder High, and then learn that actually the whole district has bought into the program. So I'm probably going to put in a request for information just to get a little bit more information about district-wide. But, you know, parents, it was a really great workshop, focusing not on winning, but life learning goals and so forth. And I would imagine that there's this nice little booklet that if you weren't able to attend the workshop last night, there's maybe 40 parents that you might be able to get the booklet. The coaches have already gone through the training at Boulder High, which I'm assuming the other high schools that's been the case. There's a parent workshop, and then they're going to have an athlete workshop, and I know I'm going to really encourage my children to attend, just so everyone's on the same page and working towards the same goals. So I'm happy to see that we have this in the district, so thanks.
Thanks, Leslie.
Just to echo Leslie on the EcoPass, that's very exciting, and I hope we get to 2,000. I understand we had a speaker last meeting, which I missed, on the deferred action for childhood arrivals during public participation, and I had a meeting with her as well, and at the risk of going over ground you've already gone over at the last meeting, I wanted to just ask what we're doing to make students and parents aware of this opportunity, because I think it's very exciting. I think it's connects pretty directly to our goals of reducing the dropout rate. Some of these kids, undocumented students, may not see opportunity for them in education, and this is a way to give them hope. So what can we do as a district to make sure students and parents are aware of this program?
So, Sam, we didn't really cover all of that last time, so this won't be a repeat. We have been in conversation. We also, Melissa and Mela participated in a conference call with the U.S. Department of Education. I believe it was the U.S. Department of Education. Is that who hosted the conference call last week? So to bring us up to speed on the communique that's come out of Homeland Security, so what we've been trying to do is not create our own information base, but to help, talk about ways we can keep this in front of the right, particularly our staff. So as parents or other students approach them, they can direct them. The other is that we did talk a little bit last time that we have made available the request for records form, because that can be initiated at the school or at this office. That's one of multiple things they need for their documentation to submit their application. And as I have followed this, and I'm sure you have in the news as well, I mean, the application process is somewhat elaborate. They're actually recommending that applicants seek legal counsel as a part of the application process, and then how to support families to do that, because it's complicated enough so that they don't not include things that need to be included, or in any way unintentionally misrepresent themselves as a part of the application process. So I would say we're still in discussion and working with the community groups about how to make that available. Some of them are also taking action to, communicate in different community forums and different gatherings that are occurring as well. So that's where we are right now, Sam.
And I know there's a presentation at one of the Latino Parent Nights at Boulder High coming up. Is
Okay.
that something we can do at our other high schools in the district?
Yeah, so what we've encouraged them to do, the community group, is to make contact, and we'll certainly help facilitate that with parent groups or student organizations in the school settings to, whatever works at one school might not work at another school, to really see what they have planned and clearly they could organize it themselves, but we said it might be easier for all if they were able to hook into an existing student or parent group and just become part of the agenda or become the agenda. So I think those conversations are going on, Sam.
So a few weeks ago, I had sent out a message to the board and Dr. Messenger about a professional at Ball who had done efficient manufacturing. He's an expert in efficient manufacturing, and it had done some training sessions with Thompson, if you recall that. So I got positive response that everyone was interested in seeing, if we could do something similar. So I sat down and talked with him. His name's Bob Cole. And he shared with me some of the activities he had done with Thompson and evidently had tried to tailor these business and manufacturing techniques to school districts and it was very well received evidently. So I asked him if he would be willing to do something with us, and he is actually very open to do that, would like to do that. So as we talked, I suggested perhaps we might start with, an hour or so meeting with the appropriate people and then see where it goes from there. So we don't invest a lot of time either for us or for him if there's not a good fit. So let me hand out some things. This is actually built for what we do at Ball, but it gives you an idea of some of the things that happen. And maybe, Bruce, you and I can talk about how to schedule something, the right people to do that. That we can follow up on that. Also, you mentioned the meeting with DAC, and I was fortunate enough to be able to attend. It was actually a school accountability training, committee training first, and Jonathan was leading that, and then helped lead the DAC meeting and so on. So that was actually nice to see some new parents in there that hadn't been involved that were actually quite excited about working with that. So that was neat to see. As far as the DAC meeting goes, Bruce did a great introduction of all the things that were happening in the school district right now, and they were very appreciative to see that. But then they started talking about their plans of the things that they would like to do for the year, and so they had come up with 11 or 12 or so items that they discussed as possible areas that they could work. So they sort of did a thumbs up, down priority of that. They're writing that up, and they would like to submit that to the board for our comment as the things that we would see or we would prioritize on what some areas that we'd really benefit from their work. And I told them that they're really an extension of us, and certainly for me helps multiply my time in any given areas. And everything that they had on their list, I said, they wanted me to comment, but I really didn't want to steer them. I wanted them to think through it first, and then that come to the board. But I said, all these things you've got listed here are things that we hear about all the time. So they're a good group of topics there, and so I'm looking forward to when those come forward here to the board, and we can look at them and work with them. So that'll be very interesting, I think, a time. The last thing that I had is, last time we talked a little bit about goals and mission statements, and Bruce actually found our mission statement, and which is kind of interesting. And let me read it to you. It said, mission of the Boulder Valley School District. The Boulder Valley School District challenges students to achieve their academic, creative, and physical potential in order to become responsible, contributing citizens. So that's interesting. And I'm not sure I know the history of that, but it's an interesting statement that we can certainly throw into the mix on all our discussions on goals. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Tom. Jenny?
So I visited, all the schools in Boulder Valley are important to me. However, I try to make a special effort to get around to the schools that are in my particular director district fairly early every school year. And so I've had an opportunity to visit 5 of them, and this last week, and I've been busy, and so and it's been great. I mean, just the level of positive energy going on in all of those schools, and the happy news that some of them have had about increased CSAP scores, and just and the fact that it wasn't too hot in most of them. Some people were a little warm, but it wasn't unbearable anywhere, and Brimfield does have its share of an air-conditioned space, so that was good. It was kind of, I just picked up a lot of good, useful information, so I'd recommend, I mean, I can't tell you how valuable it is to me when I go visit schools, just to see the effect of the policies that we make at this table, and how they affect or how they play out on the ground is sometimes a little bit surprising, and in a good ways and bad. So I was really glad. So I'd like to thank the schools that hosted me, and I'm looking forward to seeing 2 more, the final 2 in the upcoming week. And then also, since our last board meeting, most of us were at Arapahoe Ridge for the morning and got to see the career technical programs at Arapahoe Ridge and eat lunch in the cafeteria, and that was just great. I mean, I hope that you'll set up more visits like that for us, because I just the level of enthusiasm among the instructors and the students was just really energizing. And apparently, in the cosmetology department, they've been getting one of the teachers there was telling us that she had been a student in that program, and she was still getting some of the same customers every year that she had as a student many years ago. So it was kind of fun to hear about that connection to the community. So anyway, I'm again looking forward to visiting more schools, and thanks for the ones that have me.
I was going to say that I went to a conference last week at CU and put on by the National Education Policy Center, which is located in the School of Education, and it was a talk on educational reform. Jonathan was there as well. It was just a fascinating program, and I'm glad that we have some relationships that we're developing and building and maintaining, because they've been going on for a long time, with staff in the School of Education. But it was very informative, and I will try to forward on other information that I get. You can go onto their website and just download, subscribe to their materials. But they have some very interesting and important contemporary issues that have to do with education. So I would just say it'd be fun to go. I think that's it. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Lori. I wanted to extend my congratulations to Summit Middle School. I believe having a national blue ribbon school as part of your district is pretty awesome. I think it's a celebration of the students and the faculty, and it reminds me of why I'm here, which is a great education for all. So I was happy to see BVSD represented in the list of schools. I had a couple of reminders for ourselves. And the first one is, according to the MOU we developed with the BVEA through the negotiations in the spring, we will be having a joint working group to study and make a recommendation to the BVA and the school board implementation of the Senate Bill 191. The MOU calls for a member of the Board of Education. So we need somebody who is interested, and will have time for, I don't know how many meetings, but I can guess it's probably going to be more than one, many. So if anybody is interested, please email me, Jenny. So then the second one was the Superintendent Evaluation Committee that we had last year. We designed the process as an iterative process, so we'd go through every year, do the evaluation, and then reflect back on how that went and what any improvements we might make for the future. And so we also need people for that. Last year, it was Directors Belval, Lori, and me on that. If anyone would like to volunteer for that, I believe the project would be gathering input from the board members of what they liked and didn't like and any suggestions and kind of synthesizing that and then coming back to the board as a study item so that we might improve the process for next year, having been through it once. So again, if people are interested in that, please let me know. And I thank Tom for reminding me about the DAC. So we have our work session next week with the DAC to kind of go through their projects. But it's also a chance for us to suggest things that we might want them to study for us as well. And so if people have ideas for the DAC, perhaps we can email them to Shelley and Tom, who are our liaisons, and they can work together to synthesize that and integrate that into the work session for next week. And then finally, looking forward to the board's semi-annual retreat on Thursday. Chance for us to be proactive in planning what we're going to do for the year. Chance to recalibrate where we're at. And we have agendas. Bruce put the proposed agendas at your desk. So please study them, and we will be able to make any changes we need as we go through that day. So that is what I have. So that should end board comment, board communication. Our next item is the calendar committee. Bruce?
This is an item that we said we'd bring back to you tonight. And really the purpose of this evening is I would ask Ellen Miller-Brown and Sandy Ripplinger to make their way to the podium. I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then we're going to, our plan tonight is you received in your electronic packet, and it's on the website, a single page that outlines a multi-month timeline, which anyone can access and see that. What we would like to do tonight is just kind of quickly walk through that, so our viewing audience and others who maybe haven't seen that have a chance to understand both our process and our timeline. And so we'd like to provide that overview for you, and then we would be glad to answer questions. We've spent a fair amount of time this summer talking about the process, that parts of it that have been successful in the past, and some areas that we think, which you'll hear about, that we were making some slight revisions on just as we work through the process and utilizing some new technology that Ellen and Sandy will describe to you as well. So I will turn it over to them, and I know that when they finish, they'd be glad to answer questions. And Briggs has also been part of this early planning with us, so please.
So President Reed, Dr. Messenger, members of the board, tonight Ellen and I are here to talk to you about the process that we're beginning this evening. It's a fairly short, condensed process that we hope to end in 3 months. And basically we have 2 phases. I'm going to talk about the first phase, and Ellen will talk about the second phase. So we'll be developing this calendar for the next 2 years is our hope, for 13-14 and 14-15. That always kind of takes my breath away to think that far in advance. But we'll be starting with communicating, looking at the guiding principles that we've had in previous years. A couple of years ago, you developed some guiding principles. We have those from the state, from our negotiated agreement. So those are the things that will guide the work to begin with. A communication plan, as Bruce said, Briggs has been working with us on the development of this process, but following your guidance this evening, we will develop a more detailed communication plan for the next few months and how we're going to be doing this. We will be, as part of that communication, inviting parents, students, teachers, public to give us, basically give us feedback on the principles that we already have in place through an online process. We're looking forward to using something that really gets many, many more people involved and gives us some pretty clear data very quickly. We will be inviting everyone. Briggs will help us with that, to engage the community in that first part of the process. So they'll give us some initial feedback on those principles. Following that, we will kind of simultaneously, but very quickly thereafter, during the month of October, hold some community forums. We're hoping that this will not be intrusive on your process, but will kind of complement it at the same time. So our hope is to create 2 community forums and go out again, based on the information we get from the online survey, delve a little bit deeper and hear more from parents who feel like they need to have more interface with us.
So then the second step is to take what we've learned in these forums and convene a task force of some district personnel, a member from the representative of the Principals Advisory Committee, the district parent committee, the president of the Boulder Valley Education Association, and we will get together and take what we've learned from the forums and create 2 to 3 calendar options for our 2-year calendar. And I apologize, I have an error there. It says 2 to 3 years, and it actually is a 2-year calendar. So I apologize for that. But anyway, taking the forum and the community feedback, we will create some possible calendar options in early November. Then in mid-November, we will conduct a survey of employees, parents, and the general public to gather feedback on these 2 or 3 different options, and sending the survey by email to employees and to students and to parents, and then giving a link to the general public. So we'll get all of that information back, and we will take what we've heard from all of these groups and present them to you on November 13th at your board meeting at that time for your study. We will also present the calendar options and the feedback that we've gotten from the survey to the District Parent Council, to the Principal Advisory Committee, and the Boulder Valley Education Association. Then finally, a month later, we need to, as you probably remember, those of you who were on the board at the time, we have to provide BVEA 30 days between the time that we start the study of this to the time that we select the calendar. You will take action on the calendar of your choice for the next 2 years. So it's a little bit shorter, it's a little bit cleaner, we think, and a lot more. I remember, Jim, in the past, you were really anxious to make sure that we talked to every single person we could. I remember that correctly, right? And so you said, Sandy and Ellen, did you do this? Sandy and Ellen, did you do this? And so we think this time we are covering all bases. So I think we stand at this point ready for any questions you have of our process or our timeline.
All right, thank you. Yes, your memory is good. So Leslie?
I just have a question about the 2 forums. Are you planning on doing like a East County and West County?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we will.
And weekday, night, weekend? I mean, this is all things that we're figuring out for our community engagement for the
So are we.
goals too.
If you have a preference, I mean, I guess we really haven't discussed it to that level of detail yet. But you're right, there could be people who are more apt to come on a weekend versus a weeknight, so
Yeah,
we could take that into consideration.
And definitely not the same night.
No.
yeah. Yeah, well, we can think about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Dr.
I mean,
Mr.
just, the one thing that was referenced, and some of us have been involved in looking at the virtual software around community engagement, and we didn't include that in the write-up just because we were still in the process of securing a contract with the vendor for this, but we will be using the Mind Mixer virtual community engagement software for this, and so it will give folks an opportunity to enroll in the, if you've done this. I mean, I've been joined the City of Boulder's process with this, and so then they'll have a chance to participate. And what Ellen and Sandy described is really coming back twice. Once is more the principles or the concepts that they would like to have us consider in the design of the calendar, given some parameters we have to operate within, and then coming back again to really have some choices of which they'd say, well, given all that you've had to consider, these are our, 2 or 3 calendar options we think that reflect that. So once you're registered, then it would just be a reminder that you can come in, but new people can come in and participate as well. So then once they've registered, there'll be also an audience for goal setting or any other items that we have in the future. So anyway, it will be our first opportunity, and I think it really will, so folks can't get to a face-to-face community engagement because of schedule or other commitments. We hope to replicate this in a virtual environment as well. And part of what we will talk about, both in this process as well as when we use it around goal setting, are creating locations or having locations and advertising where folks can come if they really do want to do it in the virtual environment, but they don't have internet access, then we'll, help facilitate that as well. So I just wanted to, we've talked about that before, I just wanted you to know that we plan to use that in this process also.
So I think that that's really interesting, and I would be kind of interested as a board member in some sort of demonstration at some point. But the other thing I'd also like to be sure is that board members are kept in the loop as you're going through this process, because I've noticed that people often contact us directly, and it's nice to be able to say, why, yes, you can give your feedback by going to, and having a link that we can send them to so that they, when having contacted us, we can send them to the right place to give their feedback rather than sending them on a search. So anyway, and I'm sure you'll keep us in the loop, but I'm just adding an extra request.
Thank you. We will, and it will be on our website as well, all of the different events and timelines and dates and everything. Thank you, though.
I don't know which website I need to admit that.
Okay.
So I think this is a really nice opportunity to figure out, the face-to-face meetings are great, but they're logistically difficult to sort of orchestrate. We have to sort of rely on people's goodwill to volunteer because we don't have a budget for, facilitators or whatever. So it'd be nice if maybe somehow we could survey everyone that gets involved and say, Mind Mixer, face-to-face, what do you prefer? Would you do this? Take advantage of this opportunity, because I think we're going to probably get a pretty good number of people being involved, and this would be a good way of sort of using that information for
Process, yeah.
the process down the line.
Good suggestion.
So I had a couple of questions on this, and so this process looks a bit different than I've seen before. And so one was, so the committee makeup seems to be a little smaller than in years past, but it also involves more engagement and more surveying, so the committee's really trying to quarterback the input processes. Do I understand that correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, in years past, we had parents on the committee, students, et cetera. But perhaps what I'm hearing is parents and students are going to have plenty of opportunity to comment on this, and we'll be providing them as much as we can for that.
Yes, and we will have a representative from DPC, from the Parent Council.
Okay, well, yeah. I think that was my questions. Lori?
Well, you just made me think about something. One thing I think that I've noticed from feedback from people who were concerned about the calendar last year was it was very different between elementary, middle, and high school. And so it would be, I think, important in the conversation to have all three of those levels represented here. I know that committees can be unwieldy when they're too big, but it looks like, as I look at this, that there's one parent on it.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, it seems like it might be useful, not that I need to micromanage how big this committee's gonna be, but it just seems like it would be useful to have a few more parents rather than just such a large number of people who are on staff. They're the people who really came out and really spoke and really addressed all this issues for us.
So if I could, Lori, we've talked through this a fair amount, and we certainly could expand the committee. It's partly, some of what we've experienced in the comment and the feedback is that maybe too much responsibility was placed on the committee, and then people who didn't like the outcome really thought it was the committee's fault, when the reality is, I think what we're hoping is that with good input and then design, is that ultimately when we take it back out and let everyone have a chance to indicate preference. So that's really what Jim described is what we're trying to do, and so that it really isn't a committee's responsibility to figure this out. They're a design team, but then all folks will have a chance to weigh in. The other is we certainly can go to the DPC, the parent council, sometime in this timeline and visit with them as a group. They have interest, and I've talked to our tri-chairs in our planning of the fall calendar. We've left this open as an option. I think, again, we'll certainly visit with them about that and see whether they want to take meeting time with that or just find another forum where, rather than, again, putting it on 3 people, say if a broader group is interested, we've got designated folks who serve on that council. So if they want to make that a priority, we certainly can facilitate that. So we've talked through some different ways beyond just the committee itself that could do that. So, but we'll certainly consider your input.
Other questions or comments? Thank you. Good luck. Look forward to hearing the progress reports
You'll
as you
see
move
us
forward.
again.
Thanks. Our next item is the consent grouping, which tonight includes personnel items, approval of minutes, August 28th, regular meeting, acceptance of donation, Douglas Elementary, acceptance of donation, BCSIS Elementary, acceptance of donation, Whittier Elementary, board policy, ADF, Colorado Youth for a Change dropout contract, ratification of negotiated agreement between the Boulder Valley School District and Boulder Valley Para Educator Association, ratification of negotiated agreement between Boulder Valley School District and Boulder Valley Classified Association, affiliated with the Colorado Education Association and National Education Association, and resolution declaring Lakeshore Estates property surplus. I need a motion. Leslie, seconded by Jenny. Does anybody have any items they would like to pull? Any questions or comments on any items? Shelley?
I have a couple questions about the dropout program.
Yes, Dr. Deirdre Pilch to come to the podium. Deirdre is our lead on this, so Shelley.
Hi, Deirdre.
Hi, good evening.
As I look through this, it looks like this contract's just for 1 year, right?
Correct.
For $415,000.
Yes.
So are we anticipating that this is going to be an ongoing program and this is just a trial year? Or are we expecting they're going to put something in place for us that we'll be able to manage ourselves and they'll go away? Or how is this going to work?
This is our 3rd year in a contract with Colorado Youth for a Change. And you all may remember that $150,000 of this is one-time money that you all designated for this work for this year. So we know that piece will definitely go away, and our intent is to be able to pull 2 of the positions. We had one of the interventionists at Broomfield High School last year, and Broomfield High School, they were very quick learners, and they've already taken that work on their own. And so there's not the need for the interventionist there any longer. And that's our hope, especially at Fairview next year. We should be able to pull that staff member from there, and then eventually we will not need the staff member who does dropout retrieval. We're very close to retrieving all of the dropouts that we can retrieve. So we assume that that position will eventually be eliminated. And we're not sure with the Centaurus and Boulder High positions, it's very likely those will stay in the secondary school budget and will continue. And the work gets broader. You notice in the contract that they're now working with 9th and 10th graders. Initially, they worked only with 9th graders, but because the counselors and other staff at the building have taken on more of that work, they've been able to pick up work with 10th graders and then sharing the 9th grade work with other staff. Also, at Fairview, they're working actually with students 9 through 12.
So you'd expect some big portion of this to go away next year then?
Well, 150,000 of it, most
150
definitely, yes.
Two
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
Okay. And who does this work? I'm sorry, I don't have a very
So,
good background on this. Are these like licensed educator kind of people, or are they just dropout
So
specialists? Or
the actual part of the contract that is a position where you see the word education specialist, that is an employee of Colorado Youth for Change, and they typically have a teaching or school counseling background or a social work background.
And I was curious about the number in there about the expected retrieval by the per pupil count date in
So-
October.
So that's a guarantee that when we entered into this work three falls ago now, they guaranteed that they would bring back 11 students, which pays for the one employee who does the dropout retrieval. And so that's just a guaranteed minimum. Every year, we've brought back far more than the 11 students through the dropout recovery work.
Like, about how many?
So it depends. I mean, last year we brought in about 24, 26 students. The very first year when they guaranteed 11, we actually graduated 13 kids that year through the dropout retrieval work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Deirdre?
Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Jenny?
The dropout retrieval work, which I'm a big supporter of it. But I also think that we in Boulder Valley should count our blessings, because I think we have a small enough dropout population that we're actually able to contact each and every one of them. And some other districts in our state with higher poverty rates and higher numbers of at-risk kids are in no position to do that at all. And I think it's sort of criminal that as a state, we can't find a better way to take care of those kids because we have a really high dropout rate in the state. But anyway, we're lucky, and I appreciate that.
Lauren?
Well, I would just add on, Jenny, to what you just said. But part of it also is a systemic issue and effort that we've made over these 3 years. That I went with Deirdre to a meeting that she had at a high school to talk with their staff, their administrative staff about it. And they were gung-ho and enthusiastic about it. And it was terrific to listen to them talk about not letting one student sneak out or, be able to not
Yes, we
be
do
back
fabulous
in.
work, but my point is we have small enough numbers that we can do that work. Not that, anyway.
But it's also the fact that, well, there are small numbers, although they're not that small. But it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication from the staff, and I really appreciated the people that I heard, their enthusiasm. It was high.
And I don't mean to
No, I know, but I'm just saying that. No, I know what you mean. It's just that it's a variety of factors. And once what I'm excited about is that once you start this program, I mean, like 3 years ago, I was very skeptical. I mean, I had a hard time figuring out the money. It seemed like we were spending a lot of money on this program. But now, we're saving a lot of kids, and we're pulling it back in, and that's the success.
I think that was well said. So, are there any other comments or questions? Sandy, can you call the vote?
Albright?
Yes?
Belleville?
Yes.
Benford? Fuqua?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Sandy. Next item is an action item, new course proposals, 2012, 2013.
So we have just one new course proposal that was included in your packet, and so this is a bit of a timing issue, that it wasn't before you earlier. So Deirdre, if you would please come to the podium, Dr. Pilch will describe this and be glad to answer any questions you might have. Oh, sorry.
Oh, need a motion, sorry. Lori, seconded by Leslie.
So we have been offering an ACT prep course at Arapahoe campus. And we realized with the start of the school year that really the level of work they're doing in that course, that it clearly warrants receiving high school credit. And so in order to do so, we have to actually have a formal course to do that. The course will actually prepare students for both ACT and the AccuPlacer, which is the test that you take for admission at community college. We're excited about this. We think it has a lot of promise. You'll notice that it is for 1 year only, and that it is specific just to Arapahoe Ridge High School at this time.
Lori? Oh,
Good.
Leslie?
Let's see, I have a couple questions. First of all, I noticed that the course was going to supply calculators for the students to be able to take the test. And I'm just wondering, I know my children are required to get very expensive graphing calculators, and I don't know if that's the sort of calculator that they need for the ACT, but if they have it for the course, do they have a calculator that they need for the ACT test also?
So what I do know, I don't know which calculator is required, but what I do know is that Arapahoe campus has used their Opportunity Fund dollars, which are the dollars that come from Impact on Education, to purchase the calculators for this course and to allow the kids to continue to use them in the courses or at testing if they need to.
Okay, that's great. Because I would hate for that to be an impediment for taking the ACT. I think it's really great that, you know, it seems like there's a lot of attention to just talking about college options and, you know, graduating and going into college and so forth. So I just, the more we can do that, the better. How many students are we talking about this year taking the course?
So their hope is to do it with all their juniors, every
Wow.
one of their juniors. So, you know, that could be anywhere from 50 students to 100 students, depending on how many juniors they have at the time. They run on a quarter system at Arapahoe campus, and so they don't run a traditional semester. They run block classes on a quarter. So with approval, they'll start running this, and then they will have 3 quarters left in which students can take this course.
Okay, so the first quarter's done. And I mean,
Almost, mhm.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm all for this. Thanks.
Any other questions? Jenny?
Well, I never thought I'd be happy to see a course that teaches to the test, and that's its function, but I actually am. I think this is a good idea. I know that at Broomfield High School, back a few years, and I'm sure other high schools as well, that's just the one I'm familiar with, they were starting to do work around this, getting kids ready to take the ACT. And I think these tests are really great because our kids don't, one of the things that happened as a result of kids taking CSAP all the time, which is a much better test than those little fill-in-the-bubble tests we used to get when, you know, back in the day. But it means that when they get to the ACT, which is kind of a fill-in-the-bubble test, they don't know how to take it anymore because you never run out of time on the CSAP. I suppose it's possible, but time is not usually an issue with the CSAP, and it can be on the ACT. And it's just a different kind of test, so I'm really glad we're doing this for our kids and just giving them those little, the review that they get, the curriculum review, but it's also just the sort of guidance in how to take a test, which can baffle kids sometimes and cause them to do less well than they should.
So I have a question. So you mentioned that this is kind of a trial course. How might we measure success of this course in order to, if it is providing a lot of opportunity for kids and doing the things that we want it to? Would certainly like to continue it and possibly expand it as I would. So any ideas how we'll measure that?
Their ACT test scores is how we're measuring it. So we've already seen an increase in the results at Arapahoe campus because of the course they offered in the past without credit and without it being required. But they fully intend to see a higher pass rate on AccuPlacer and better ACT results.
Well, I do know test taking is a skill, and teaching our kids that skill is something that's important. So, without any other questions or comments, Sandy, call a vote.
Albright?
Yes.
Belleville?
Yes.
Benford? Fuqua?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Sandy. Our last item tonight is agenda setting. And I neglected to mention this earlier, but we do have a spot in our retreat agenda to talk about, as a board, what our work plan might be for the next year. And so I'd ask board members to be thinking about items of interest and bring that to the retreat, and we'll have ample opportunity to discuss and move forward with wherever we end up. So outside of that, then, are there other items, agenda items? Leslie?
Mine's not an agenda item. I'm just, the work session next week with DAC, is that the usual 5 to 7 timeframe? I didn't see it on the website. Okay, thank you.
I will post it till the end of this week.
Okay.
And if I could just add, Leslie, we will include the items that Tom referenced earlier that are being brought forward by DAC. So those will be included with the agenda. So when you receive that, you can take a few minutes and read through those in just advanced preparation. And then any other items, as Jim mentioned, that and Tom mentioned, that you might want to bring into the discussion. But those will be included with the agenda when it hits your desk.
Oh, Jenny, and then Shelley?
So one of the things I found out when I was visiting schools last week is that is that our policy on fees may be a little outdated. I happened to walk into an elementary school just as they had received had just come to their attention that while they can charge fees to cover admission for field trips, they can't charge fees to cover bus transportation. And our transportation service does charge schools to provide buses. And it's not a huge amount per student, but it adds up over time, particularly for some of those fourth grade curriculums now where the kids take 4 or 5 field trips a year. So they can't charge the kids, so it has to come out of their SRA budget somehow, or their PTA has to pay for it or something. And so I went back and looked at our fee policy, and I noticed that it was last updated in 1976. Am I right about that, Bruce? It looked really old. It's old. It's old. You can charge fees for towels, towel rentals, but not for this. So I'm thinking that's sort of I think it's a problem for schools that they can't do that, and the reason for it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you can charge kids admission when they go on field trips, it's not clear to me why you can't also ask them to defer the cost of the bus. Always providing that kids who have a problem with that the cost should not be burdensome. And I also don't think this is being applied equally around the district. Some schools know about it, but I talked to another parent who goes, "What do you mean? I just paid a field trip fee, for the year that included bus transportation." So I think we need to revisit our fee policy and get it in a workable, something that works for our schools and our kids and our teachers.
Sounds like a productive information item to start, so we'll work on getting that scheduled. Shelley?
Now, Bruce, I don't know if this is on your list of things maybe to talk about at some future board meeting, but I'm wondering where we are on background checks. I happen to be around a lot of active parents who volunteer a lot, and several of them over the last, month or so have asked me if that policy is going to continue at that price. And
So, yes, to answer your question directly, Shelley, it is actually on our list of potential future board agenda topics. So we have it in the queue. And also it is, I believe, on the list from DAC. It was at least on a preliminary list I looked at, so we'll see if it's on this list. I don't recall the final list. So I think there's some interest on their part to discuss this as well. We've had in-depth conversation at the administrative level after really last year was the first full year of kind of wall-to-wall implementation of this, and we've received a fair amount of feedback. We'd already sent notice out in the spring about continuation, so we were sort of already collecting, working through the process, so we didn't see that it was an appropriate place to stop once we started in year 2 by the time, because some of this started in the spring of last year. But we are very interested administratively to engage in an appropriate conversation with the board and maybe DAC as well, and do it in a timely manner. So if we are going to change our practice as a district, that we can, my thought is by early in the calendar year, so January-ish, so that we can inform schools and community members and parents well in advance, so that we don't start down the path again if we're going to, change our expectations or how we manage that. And we have some ideas that we'd like to suggest as at least considerations, and there are some implications for those. So a fair amount of staff work has gone into discussing where we might go if this isn't where we want to be. And then we certainly want to hear your ideas as members of the community as well. But clearly it's an issue that we think deserves another look, and we're prepared to do that. So thank you.
All right, well, with nothing further, I'll look forward to seeing everyone Thursday morning, 8:30 start. 8:30. Same great place. Hey, everyone, have a good night. Oh, we are adjourned.